What's up, guys? Today I'm going to show you how to install stainless steel Catless headers on an E46 BMW. First thing, you gotta either drive up on ramps, which is what I'm doing, or jack the car up and put it on jack stands. Unless your car is dirt nasty low, then you're gonna have to use jacks and jack stands, but I'm doing it like this. Also, if you have some bricks, throw the bricks in the back just in case to be safe, and also pull your car up with the e-brake and some bricks and you'll be good. Okay, starting from under the hood. My model is a 99 328i. Your model may be different, but steps are similar. First thing you gotta do is loosen up the tank for the windshield fluid. It's a 10mm right here. Loosen that up. You're gonna lift it out, move it out of the way, and disconnect the connectors. Okay, once you loosen that bolt right here, you gotta pull this out, and there's two connectors. One right there, pull that out. One on the other side, right there. Pull that out. Once you pull out those connectors, you can move the reservoir out of the way. I put it over here. Somehow, just be careful. Next thing, you gotta remove the secondary air pump. So basically, you gotta loosen up the two nuts right here. That's one. That's the other. And take off this clamp with the flathead. Okay, so these two are 10mm. I'm using these ratcheting wrenches that I got from Home Depot. They're very useful. If you don't have this, you can probably fit a small ratchet in there. I believe it's the smallest ratchet size, 10mm. Loosen up both of these. Also, once you loosen the hose clamp, you could slide it down a little bit, and this should be able to pop right off. Just gotta wiggle it out a little, and that pops right off. Okay, so for this secondary air bracket, there's actually three, not two nuts. There's one, two that I showed you, and there's actually one that you won't be able to see, but it's underneath. You're gonna have to look underneath there, and there's a third nut. And once you remove those three nuts, you can remove the pump with the hose disconnected. Okay, with the three nuts removed, you can now remove the air pump, like so. Just wiggle it out. There's also one connector there that you have to disconnect before it could come out. Okay, to make life easier, I'm also going to remove this little thing that goes into the hose. It's also basically two 10mm nuts. One's there, the other one's on the right of it. It's hard to see, but there's two of them. So with all the secondary air stuff removed, you now have access to the bolts that go into the engine block for the headers. As you can see, I already have aftermarket headers, but the reason why I'm changing these headers is because these cracked on me. These are China headers, they're not stainless steel, so they cracked on me easily. And I'm gonna be installing stainless steel ones this time. If you're doing this from stock, your headers are slightly bigger, a lot bigger than these, and it's gonna be the same process, except you're gonna have a heat shield right here that is riveted on to the gasket. If you just wiggle it until it breaks off, then you'll have easy access to all the bolts. All the bolts are right there. You can see some of them. Most of them can be easily unbolted with a ratchet. And yeah, I'll show you later. Now we're gonna take off these covers so we can expose the O2 sensor wires and disconnect the wires. To get to the O2 sensor wires, we're gonna have to remove these two plastics off. To make life easier, I'm also gonna remove the cabin filter thing, all of this, so you can easily have access to everything. Not just to make life easier, but you actually have to remove everything. Here are just four bolts and nuts. 1, 2. There's one right there. 3. One more right here. Under that, 4. So once we remove this, you can easily remove that. Okay, I'll be removing the cabin filter stuff. 1, 2, 3 things twist to the left, they pop out. This just comes right out. Move it to the side. Pull off these things, pull out the cabin filter. Unclip these clips. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. This out. Pull out these cables. This is, you're not gonna have this because this is for my angel eyes. You're only gonna have these two probably. So just pull these out of the way. And to remove the cabin filter housing, there's 3 Torx, oh actually 4 Torx bolts. 1, there's 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it's a size T30 Torx. Loosen up, take out all 4 of them. And once you remove the 4 T30 Torx bolts, you can pull this out. Just slides right out. Move that to the side. And now the 4 bolts that for the covers are exposed. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's plastic covers on them that look like this. You have to remove these plastic covers with the flathead first. So I removed these 2. Now these last 2, so loosen them up and remove them. Okay, with the 4 nuts removed, these covers come right off. Also take off the oil cap so you can remove the other cover and put it right back in, just so that no dirt flies in there for now. Move the covers to the side. And here you'll see the O2 sensor cables. So you pull them out of the clips. That's 1. In your non-touch card, there should be 1 here that I just pulled out. Should be 1 here, but mine's further back because I already have aftermarket headers. So just pull out these things, label both sides of the cable, and you're gonna disconnect them. To make sure to label them properly, or else you're gonna screw up later. These clips, they basically just wiggle them out. They're like little clips like that, and there's gonna be 4 of them. You're gonna have to disconnect. So after you install the new headers, you're not going to be able to put the connectors back in the same locations. You're just going to have to zip tie them to something so that they don't dangle around. There's no other way around this. Okay, now underneath the car, first things, you got to remove all the covers and skid plates. Depending on your make and model, you may have different skid plates. This one, this is barely hanging on for me, so it's I believe there's just 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 6 screws on it to remove it. Once you remove that, we'll remove the brace. To remove this brace, right here, this brace, there's 4 60mm bolts. 1 right there, 1 on the right, 1 on the left, 1 right here in the bottom, and 1 inside this hole. 4 60mm bolts. Okay, so the brace is out, and now we got a lot more space under here. We're gonna see, these are my old aftermarket piece of shit Chinese headers. Next, we're gonna remove all O2 sensors from the headers. with the aftermarket ones, all 4 O2 sensors are down here, but you're probably going to be changing out the OEM ones, so 2 of them are going to be back here, the post-cat ones, and the other 2 headers, other 2 O2 sensors are going to be right up here, right on top of each header. He's going to take out each O2 sensor. If by some reason it's seized in like once mine was, then just you're gonna have to take it out with the header. But try your best to remove the O2 sensors from the headers, all 4. Okay, so here I got my 4 sensors out. The short ones are for the pre-cat, I believe. Long ones are for post-cat. I'm not sure, but make sure you label them and be careful not to damage them because they're very sensitive. Okay, now to the most annoying part of the job. Since these cars are really old, chances are your nuts are seized, rusted on, so it may be really hard to take them off if they don't come off and the bolts strip. What I had to do when I first removed my stock ones was I had to grind off the bolts. So just try to your best, use a lot of WD-40. Also, you could also heat it up with the torch, that may help. And try to disconnect the stock header from the exhaust. So it's gonna be four nuts and bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now as you can see, I got all the bolts out that connect to the rear of the exhaust. Now the annoying part of the job is unbolting the headers from the engine. There should be, I believe, 16, but I'll let you know in a sec. Okay, so all the bolts that mount to the engine are size 11mm. I'm using this. Start from the top and unbolt as many as you can from the top. Okay guys, so you may or may not have to remove the engine mount, but it'll be much easier if you do. When I first did the headers, I managed to do it without removing the engine mount, but I'll show you guys how to remove it anyway. It'll make it much easier. So you start off, get a jack, the block of wood, and support your engine with the jack gently over the oil pan. Jack it up a bit, and you're good. Okay, so to unbolt the engine mount, there's 4 bolts going to the engine. Okay, so there's 2, the bottom, the top. There's the ground right here. That ground wire you gotta unbolt, and 2 more on the other side, right here, and these 2 right here, 1, 2. So you have to unbolt all 4 of those, and then after that, unbolt the engine mount right there from the bottom. Okay, so the bolts for the engine mount are 13s. This is what it should look like when they're removed. And now the ones for the engine mount to subframe, those are 16s, and there's 1 from the top and 1 from the bottom. You don't have to unbolt it from the top. From the bottom is enough. You'll be able to remove the mount by just unbolting it from the bottom. You should get one of these universal joint kind of things to help you remove the engine mount from the subframe. It's useful. When you do that, after you remove the engine mount, even if you're not able to completely pull it out, start unbolting the front header, because that's the one that will come out first. And once you unbolt all the bolts from the front header, you should be able to move it around and remove both the engine mount and the front header. Okay guys, so this is what the studs and bolts look like from the header I removed, the front header. There's 8 in total, and as you can see, sometimes they come out without the stud, sometimes they come out together. I used the size 11 like I said. I had to use a combination. Sometimes I used small one, sometimes I used a longer one, sometimes I used an extension, and using the small ratchet. Also, I have a little pipe for some leverage, so when some of them were really seized on, I put this pipe over my ratchet like this, which gave me more leverage. Now I'm gonna go try to remove the front header because all the bolts are out. Okay guys, don't forget to unbolt the ground from the frame of the car right here like I did. It's enough to just do it from one side. Sorry about that. Here you go. Unbolt, and it's off. It's size 13 millimeter. Then you could just pull it right off like that. Okay, so here's the engine mount removed with the ground cable attached to the mount. Here's the front header, my old Chinese not stainless steel header removed compared to my new stainless steel header. The piping is slightly bigger on the new header, so maybe that will provide a bit more airflow, but quality wise I can tell, maybe you can tell that these headers are better. Both old headers removed. Here's the reason I'm changing the headers. I've had an exhaust shop weld in this bunk for me previously, and they did a shitty job because the got loose and pop fell out. So that's the reason why I'm putting these new headers in. One thing to mention, that apparently they sent me the wrong headers. As you can see, the flange here faces upward and the one here faces sideways. So what I'm gonna have to do is either cut it here, turn it and re-weld it, or cut it on the exhaust and turn it, bolt it in and re-weld it. So it's not a big deal. I just have to visit an exhaust shop, and yeah, that's about it. So all headers out. As you can see, a lot of space in there. I'm gonna clean out the block because there's some corrosion and rust there, to make sure the new gaskets and headers sit flush. And then I will begin installing the new headers, starting from the one in the rear, because that way it is easier to tighten up all the bolts and easier to install. Okay, what I also did to make life a little easier, went to the middle of the car where the exhaust is hung, and I unbolted the 8 bolts so I was able to now lower the exhaust. It is basically 8 13 millimeter bolts for the brackets, and you can drop the exhaust. Okay, so there's the first header in, bolted in nice and tight. Now onto the front header. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention, when the jack is supporting the engine, it's easier when you jack up as much as possible so that the engine goes up as much as possible. I am now at the step, I put in the engine mount back in place, but did not bolt it in yet. I'm gonna now try to put in the second header with the engine belt not bolted, so I can move around and play around with it. Okay, so I found that the front header goes in very easily when you put it in from the top right here. So that's what I did. It's sitting right there. I put my gasket in place. Gasket's in place. Now I'm gonna bolt up the second header, and we're good to go. Alright, so both headers are in, tightened down tight. You have to put them pretty tight, but remember that this is the engine block. You don't want to strip the engine block. These bolts aren't too big, so you gotta feel it out, make it tight so there's no exhaust leaks, and then basically now you're ready to put the engine mount back in and do everything else in reverse, and you should be good. Okay, so now that I'm putting everything back together, I'd like to mention that secondary air pump is really not important. Many people delete it. It's only used to reduce emissions during cold starts, so I will be in the future deleting that by installing a block off plate right there and coding out the fault code for my ECU. So check out my video, stay tuned, I will post a video about that sometime in the future. As you can see here, I included some spacers and a 90-degree elbow for the post-cat O2 sensors in order to prevent check engine light from appearing. If you do this, you should get no check engine light. You can buy these spacers at AutoZone or eBay or whatever. Okay, so all the O2 sensors back in place. Grease them up so they don't seize up. Everything is ready to go back together. The rest steps are all easy, just reverse of what was in the video. Alright guys, so this is what it looks like all bolted up. These bolts came included with the gaskets, everything's up in there. All the O2 sensors are connected. The rear exhaust hangers are connected back. Everything down here is ready to go. Okay, so the secondary air pump is in. Now I'm gonna start up the car to test to see if there's any check engine lights. You guys should do this always to make sure before putting everything back together. So here we go. Alright, so it looks good so far. No check engine light, but there is obviously an exhaust leak because I will be welding that tomorrow. Alright, that's all guys, you're done. Thanks for watching. Hope this video helped. If you have any questions, ask me in the comments below. Thanks.